No na kia kui na le ia le ia de ti o watu ko ina kino malu talani malu e ko no na ho la kai kono mauka o makong no na uma ko mai kala ya kala kau mai ko ku ya ka halawai na uma ko ya ka hina alo ya ka akau kalani uki hai kalani uwe kalani nunulu kalani ka holo kalani e ya ka pula au ko moana nui e mala o ko ya maku e ulu kalani e ulu ko hono e ulu ka pai aina pai e ho mai kike e ho mai kai ka e ho mai ki aka mai e ho mai ka mau popono e ho mai ki ke papalo oh my God! We're back to it. All right, we'll go back. I wanted to talk to you without introducing you to the land that taught our ancestors and that feeds us, and then the ancestors that are still there. So I'm going to put you back up and you see a whiteboard behind me. You don't think this is the entirety of our conversation. But can you guys hear me and see me okay?
Fine. Yep. Lovely.
Cowboy. Okay.
What we're doing right now is called indigenizing. Is we're colonizing the colonizer. We're using their tools.
Love, yeah! Recolonizing the colonizer. Aye.
It's good to see you, cousins.
Kia ora.
Your Tita Tina represented you well when she was here, and they stayed with us for a week, and it was more than an honor. I think it was a reawakening of the understanding that we are cousins and that the ocean doesn't divide us but it unites us, and that we need to be in these places now, because if we're not, other people will be, and the choices that they're making have done nothing but diminish our responsibility of the lands that we care for, and our future generations have the ability to come into. So I'm really excited to meet with cousins who are working in the spaces of returning choice and control to their community via accessing education, but really wrestling with that idea of what constitutes an education. That our kupuna, as we call them, or utipuna, were holders of traditions that and ways of being and knowing the world that the modernity is just beginning to understand, and that we need to be in places where we can assume that control in a way that creates collective abundance and meet the work with a sense of love, responsibility, and joy, but also diligence, and sometimes we gotta show them our teeth. Thank you. Tina asked me to give a presentation for you all, and the presentation that I was going to show you was my master's thesis. But before we do that, I just want to give you a quick overview of who I am and where I work and who you just saw. Koe, you want to step up?
Aloha.
Yeah, I know.
I have to go this way, but.
Okay, am I super dark, or is this better?
Yes. Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah. You guys are too tanned to be in the dark.
I see as a teeth. But again, my name is Kamuela Inos. I am one of the directors here at Mount Organic Farms. To my right is Koe Sharice Sana. She is my boss. I know she's about 15 years younger than me, because she is the current director of our farm enterprise. And Koe is our proof of concept. Koe has come through a program, and really stepped up and become a leader, not just for herself and her community, but I think globally too, in this idea of restoring our food systems and caring for the land in ways that our ancestors did, but also in a way that we code switch, and that those that live in this space now can kind of see what we're talking about in their own language. Quickly, Ma'o is a social enterprise. We're a not-for-profit that generates revenue. The revenue-generating part of our program is our 24-acre certified organic farm. We're now the largest organic farm on the island of Oahu, which is the urban seat of Hawaii. We do about 750? What did you say?
We're trying to shoot for maybe at least
$800,000 a year. We sell to all of our top restaurants. We do all of our big retail spaces, and we do direct sales through a subscription box and 2 farmers markets, and we sell to our community.
Awesome.
But what makes this a social enterprise is that the daily operations are run by young adults from our community that we provide a college tuition for. They put in 20 hours a week on the farm, and in exchange they get a full tuition waiver to our local community college, which is not as wonderful as Yohananga, but we're trying to help them get there. And then we graduate them with their 2-year degree and help them work on to their 4-year baccalaureate. Kawi, to my right, started with us a year before I started the program as staff, and she was one of the first interns to get her 2-year degree. Then we sent her to Italy for 2 weeks to thank her. Then she got her baccalaureates in Hawaiian studies, and then we sent her for a month to stay in Hamilton and Auckland with Auntie Manu Meyer, where she helped Auntie Manu set up the first masters. What was it called?
Masters of Applied Indigenous Knowledge.
So, and I'll turn it over to her to give a brief introduction to herself, and then maybe I'll jump quickly into the presentation. But how long do we have, Tina? Just
as
so
long
I can
as you want. We'll have as much as you get.
Just to go back to want to just give an introduction?
Yeah. So, aloha mai kakou. My name is Kaui. I am currently the farm manager here at Mount Organic Farms. As Kamu said, I graduated from our community high school here in Waianae, and I came here not knowing what I wanted to do. I just knew I liked to work outside, and I just wanted to go to college. So Ma'o provided a pathway for me to go to college through scholarship, and at the same time I would get a stipend. So I just worked there, and about a year I started to learn more, and then I started get training by the farmers here who was before me, and then and I guess they saw a little something in me. It's just like it kind of reminded me of back in our ancestors, they would pick out the young ones that they would see to fit that profession or that practice. And it was almost the same thing, but I was just like 18, But it was happening, and I guess that doesn't really happen. I mean, it happens in some families, that they see somebody who might be good at something, so they'll take them fishing, they'll take them go hunt pig in the mountains. But to have somebody to actually lead is something that I only thought our ancestors did. Yeah, they trained the li'i, or to be able to manage people and to manage land and to manage resources. So I thought growing up, I thought that was only what my ancestors did. Yeah, my kupuna, and they taught me how to farm, but through the farming, I learned how to become a leader, how to manage people, how to manage the aina, how to manage my schoolwork, and then how to be successful. So I got my AA, my liberal arts at the community college here, and then I graduated. I went to Italy for about 3 weeks to participate in a slow food conference that happens every couple of years, and I applied and I got accepted through Slow Food America, and they helped did my boarding and stuff like that. So it was a trip for me. That was my first international trip. Nice. So being outside of Hawaii, being outside of America was really eye-opening, and that's where I started to like realize that what I do at home is really important. And then I went to Hawaiian Studies. I went to UH Manoa, the university here, and I was at Hawaiian Studies, and I graduated. And then after I graduated, I went to Aotearoa, and I witnessed the opening of Hewaka Hiringa in what is it called? I forget. In Hamilton, Maho Ko Tukutuku. Is that the campus? Yeah, the campus there. So I was there with Auntie Manu them and Kahu Tikanawa, and pretty much was like their slave. I ran around with the old aunties and did all these little things, but at the same time share my story, yeah. And I seen some of them who came recently with Tina them this past trip, and it was really awesome. And they finally got to see what I do and what my community is doing and what me and my peers are doing. We want to feed Hawaii, yeah. We want to feed our community, and we want to grow leaders at the same time. Yeah, we are growing leaders at the same time. So, and it goes way deeper than that, I think one thing that I took a lot from when I came back home from the Wananga was your guys' what would you call it, model, or your guys' kind of practice, whānau transformation through education. And that's what really hit me hard, is just that if we aren't changing the families here, if we aren't teaching the whānau here, why are we still doing this? I mean, what we're doing is good, but if we're not changing the core, we're not doing anything. We're just only creating this pu'uhonua, or this sacred space, a part of our community that rejects everybody else, or that's not affecting everybody else. So what we're trying to do is create these young leaders who start spreading the aloha to their family, the responsibility and the kuleana to their family, and understanding that, this morning we have a check-in, and it's almost like a karakia for you guys, and we had a check-in, and then I talked about acceptance. Once you accepted that you have kuleana, once you accepted that your rest of your life you're going to be working or you're going to be learning, all you can do from there is do what you got to do. Once you accepted the kuleana or responsibility that you have to take care of your family, you're not going to be in the future or the past like, oh, I got to do this, oh, I never do that, oh, I got to do this, oh, I never do that, oh, I got to do this. What it is that I told him, with you accepting what you got to do and not, crying about it or worrying about it, you're living in the present and you're doing what you're supposed to do. So, and kind of getting that kind of concepts and deeper meanings in their work life here is important, and it's the kind of things we don't talk about, or a lot of us don't talk about now, because we get so caught up in the dailiness of work, or life is just hard. We gotta get past that, or we get past that. Life is hard for everybody, but we all can do it together, yeah. And we can do way more once we're all working together. So, that's what I kind of do.
I want to get up and clap.
Presentation for you guys.
Yeah, well, what we might do, if it's okay with you guys, is we'll go around the group and we'll get everybody to introduce themselves as well, so that we all know.
We're working and I have to head out. So it's nice meeting you guys. And
Mahalo.
We'll see you guys soon.
Yay!
High five.
So again, thank you for the honor of being able to share some of our thoughts and work with you. When I talked to Tina about what we could share, what we could present, and when we had conversations when your whānau was here, for me, the initial reason why I'm really excited about this is that, and I share this with your whānau, is that I believe that our ancestors are the same people, and we've always shared the same way of seeing the world and understanding the world, and that we coming together. This wasn't a trip or just a vacation, but I think I wanted to see it as a continuation of our migrations. Our ancestors have always migrated with intention, and that there were a lot of things happening. And the name of the gathering was Moana Nui Rising.
Nice.
The part of that mana'o that was interesting to me was it was both a metaphor as well as a literal reality. The way climate is changing, our oceans are rising, and there are a lot of very great. There's a lot of challenges happening within our natural landscapes, and the changes are happening. And how do we understand that? And then I wanted to share a little bit both on my master's thesis as well as how my master's thesis relates to our work. We get asked quite often, how do you replicate what we do here? And it's a farm and it's a college kind of component, but it's not a farm and a college thing. I think it's a return to our ancestry, where people and land, where you're of the most important thing, and that is what we maintained. But we're trying to do that in a modern context. And the other part about that is, we as cousins, we share programs and they work. Tina had a chance to visit my daughter's punanoleo, which is Kongareo. And my child goes through the immersion school, and 30 years ago, a bunch of elders here looked to you all to help restore our language. And they brought over the practice and the way of understanding a philosophy of education from your tupuna and all of the people who have been working on it in your aina, in your whenua. And it worked perfectly. It worked perfectly in that it was incredibly imperfect, but it stuck around. it was warts and all. It was very not slick, not all the things that people may think need to happen when you replicate something. It didn't come out of the box shiny. It was like transplanting a plant, where there's dirt, and there's hard work, and there's blood, sweat, and tears, and there's patience involved. But over the last 30 years, it has taken root and has been a catalyst for us, Kanaka Maoli, to speak our Alelo Tuahine, our ancestors' tongue again. So the point of me sharing that is, I believe that the systems we create here are most likely to work with our cousins first, because there's something that we share that is beyond just the language or beyond just the cultural practices, but it's our ancestry that these things resonate. So I sent out my PowerPoint, and I think, Tina, have you put it into a PDF, or is it up?
Yeah, it's up as a PowerPoint PDF.
Got one.
Beautiful.
Okay.
And we've all got a copy.
This for me frames the program, because it's in what I was shared with Tina and her whanau that came up is there's words that we use in common, and hearing the Maori meaning definitions helped me understand the Hawaiian better. And in Hawaiian, for a lot of our songs or our mele and our chants, there's the literal meaning, and then there's the different layers of the metaphorical meaning that we call it kauna. Is that you may think that that's a song about a wave breaking along that coast, but it's actually a song about two lovers that would meet at that spot, and then they would go deeper. So the kauna, when I heard in Maori, is treasure. It was hidden meaning. It's the treasure, it's the worth, it's the value. So I wanted to share the kauna of our work, because you can see the surface there. Things. There's a video that I think, I don't know if, did you show them the video that Whole Foods did, Tina?
No, not yet, but we'll have a look nosy after this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of videos on us, but I think the videos is what we show the outside world.
Yeah.
I think what I've learned about, after you do a pofiti, then you can speak in honesty, because you have had that relationship developed, and you know the people that you've made them family. They're not people from outside that can listen. They're people at the inside that can share. So the intention of my master's thesis was really to talk about our work through our ancestry. And I wrote this thesis. My background, I was raised, Tina had a chance to go to our mala that I was raised in, that my father helped to establish, and they established it about 40 years ago now. And they fought the state, and they brought the water back down, and it was an agrarian system that our ancestors had built over 500 years ago. And it represented the full science and technology and a way of seeing the world that sustained people for thousands of years with no imports. It sustained them in a way that they were fit, healthy, and strong. And it wasn't a perfect society. I don't want to paint ourselves out as perfect. I think there's a danger there when you put yourself above critique. But what I will say, it was taught to us by the land. That land, when you live on islands force you to learn very harsh realities, and that become loving over time. It's like a good parent. And I was raised in that space, and I went to our local schools, and I dropped out right before I graduated, and then I went back to college, and I got my degrees, my bachelor's in Hawaiian studies and my master's in urban and regional planning, and I had a hard time getting my master's. I just wanted to be back in my community working. So my professor gave me a great piece of advice: is make it about your community. So I was like, okay, so you can go back and live it out. So in essence, what working up at my father's place and working at here taught me was the word sustainability is a very dangerous word, because people are acting like it's a new word. And then they're creating systems that give them ownership of that word and put themselves as experts. And pardon my French, that pissed me off. Because I saw what our ancestors did, and I understood the level at which they had created these systems that were really, like you said, ahead of their time. And no one was talking about these systems from that perspective. They're calling it cultural practice, they're giving it lip service, but then but in modern times, we have to do this and this and this. So I decided to do the genealogy of the word sustainability. In Hawaiian, we call our ancestry a mo'okuauhau. What's the Maori word for your ancestry, your genealogy? It's
Whakapapa.
Whakapapa. For us, it's mo'okuauhau. The mo'o that stands in the mists of time. And that's your genealogy. So I did the mo'okuauhau of the word sustainability. And then I did the mo'okuauhau of our land use practices. Because the reason why you would do a mo'okuauhau is to establish the right to speak, the right to be in a place. You have precedent. You can do your ancestry, you can trace these things back. And I figured I'd apply an indigenous methodology to a Western system to establish our right to speak and lay claim to these things. Once a genealogy of something, you have power over something. So you're very careful who you share your genealogy with. So the intent of mine was to do the genealogy of the word sustainability, and then to hold the genealogy of our ancestral practices alongside it, to then figure out, to deconstruct it and reconstruct it, to figure out how we can move forward. So I'll try to run through that relatively quickly, but be available for all of you. And I want the questions to be the main part of this. I don't want to talk at you. I hate doing that. So it assumes that I know more than you. I just wanted to show you our work and show you how this then translates to the designs of a program. So you can just start on the first page, and the title of my work was Towards an Aina-Based Sustainability Model. And then Olelo Hawaii, Aina is whenua. Aina is literally that which feeds. Ai is kai is ai. And when you put that na particle behind it, it makes it a collective plural. Ours that feeds. And in Hawaii, there's been a recent part of the renaissance of our traditions and practice.
Hello,
Um,
guys.
Bye.
is that when you're not careful, it leads to co-option. And people started using the word aina to mean land, which it kind of does, but it doesn't really capture it. So they, oh, that's your aina, that's our aina. But what it really means to us is food systems, which the land is part of, but you can't have aina without kanaka. So towards the aina-based sustainability model is just the first thing. If you the next page, it's my intent. And this is for grad school, so I had to prove I was a grad student, so I had to use all these grad student words. And I give another talk when I'm talking to my brothers and my classmates, but I'll give you guys academics, my full-bore academics. The intent was to create a new sustainability paradigm based off of traditional land use practices and epistemologies. That was really like a real I wanted to do that in a very aggressive way to say, look, I'm not going to fluff around. This is what we're going to create a new model based on our ancestral practices, and we're going to start talking about sustainability. Not like you guys just created a term and are shopping it to us savages. And I wanted to make it really, the next couple slides are just about the realities of Hawaii. But I wanted to say, when I went to Aotearoa, we were there for 2 years ago, and we stayed mostly in Auckland and Wellington, but we stopped off at Taupo and Waitomo. I just saw so much aina. I was just so in love with the land and the landscape, and I felt so much abundance there. And I just was thinking man, the first of our cousins that got off of that va'a and into that colder, there are some brave Polynesians.
Yeah, very
I
different.
I see you guys all bundled up. I'm like, but it was the land that you have there and the access to fresh water that you have in Aotearoa make you guys so incredibly wealthy. Unbelievably wealthy. I don't want to tell you guys that without any qualifications. I mean, Moana Nui and Aotearoa are just I believe Aotearoa will be a nexus in the world's future and the resources you have there already. But for Hawaii, the next slide is these are the challenges that we face. And that's the slide after the intent. 80 to 95% of our food is imported.
Wow.
And on Oahu especially, those imports, where our docks are and where airports are also within our tsunami inundation zones. So if there's a big wave that comes out, we will lose our ability to get food from the outside. So that's a near-term challenge, but I think there are other broader, more global and, I don't know what the word is, systemic challenges in terms of climate change and oil. The costs of oil go up and the changes in climate make us that much more vulnerable. And people talk about, we need to be able to grow more food and these are issues, but the reality is that we're unsustainable by design. It's not by accident that we're not growing our own food anymore and that we have to import all of our food. There are market forces in play and there's political will. The reality is there are a lot of people making a lot of money off of us being food insecure. And power will never turn itself over to a lesser power. Just because we say what they're doing isn't right, because a lot of those forces aren't based in Hawaii. They're forces outside of us that are making money off of our food insecurity. So I wanted people to be very clear with that. So the next slide was how are we responding. In Hawaii, I don't know how it is for you lot, but in our ancestry, one of the rights of the people relative to the chiefs was that we had the right to kill our chiefs.
Oh, wow.
They weren't living up to their sacred obligation to ensure that we were being defended and that we had access to food and water. And there are a lot of stories, a lot of songs, they're really joyful songs about killing chiefs. I said that about the context of how we're responding to this problem in society.
You be chief.
Maybe no one left.
That way, there's a lack of clarity on how to respond to these challenges. People are using the word sustainability as a general term. But saying you practice sustainability is like saying I practice religion, or I practice a martial art. I mean, if you're not really specific on what type of sustainability you're practicing, you lend yourself to be co-opted. The second part of that problem is that the types of sustainability models that they are practicing are rooted in the same mindset that created the problem.
Yeah.
So they're focusing on changing light bulbs and stuff like that, which are important. But there's a great metaphor that I've heard, which is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The systems issue, the big, broader systems, and you're doing important work, but they're not systemic work. Then you're not preparing yourself for the real issue. And the final thing that we were responding with is like greenwashing, using these terms to continue to be bad practitioners of the landscape, and the new form of classism, where the people who can afford these green, trendy things aren't the people who live in our community. And a step back, the community that we're based in, Waianae, is the largest concentration of Native Hawaiians in the world. And the reason why most of the Kanaka live here is not because most of the Kanaka are originally from here. This land was considered the least arable for sugarcane. So when the plantation owners kicked us off of our ancestral lands, they reposited us here in what they call Hawaiian homesteads. So the majority of the Hawaiians, after we got dispossessed, ended up in Waianae because it was considered the most hot and arid part of the island, and we therefore have had to start challenges economically, academically. So we're considered a community that you don't go to, with all the challenges, the violence. I'm the only guy I know that has a master's degree in my class. A lot of my cousins, my brothers, have had dependency problems with drugs, violence, issues with violence, incarceration. So what does sustainability mean to somebody who's homeless? What does sustainability mean to somebody who's currently hooked on methamphetamine? What does sustainability mean to all these different people? Frankly, if we're not in this conversation and we're not talking about our ancestry, we're going to be the people that inherited these outdated types of technologies, and we're not going to be participating. So that's how we're responding. I don't like to stay in a negative too long. Even though I'm part Pakeha myself, I try to keep that side. I want to bring the good part of my Pakeha to the table and to talk about opportunities. Because when we make it about the challenges and what they did to us, we make it about them. And we discredit our ancestors and all that they've done. So I want to push the rest of this towards what the opportunities are and help to push it there. So the opportunity that we have next is to re-articulate a paradigm that is rooted in the mindsets and traditions that allowed the Kanaka. I had to do this for some other professors, but I don't want to say Polynesians, I say Kanaka, the Maoli of us, the originals, to live within our finite biosystems for thousands of years. We lived in we participated with our resources for thousands of years, and we allowed ourselves to continue to thrive. So the tasks before us then was identifying what is sustainability, what is sustainability in a Western and continental context, what is sustainability in a Hawaiian island context, And the goal of the task before us was ID 21st century iterations of traditional practices. 21st century ways to make our ancestry perpetually relevant and underpin everything we do, not at the surface, but at the core. And the surface could look different, but the core had to be very Maori. So with that, the next page is really quick. In the whakapapa of genealogy, of sustainability, when I researched it, I did a literature review. We call our teachers Kumu, so I'm going to call her Kumutina. I don't know if Kumutina has had you do a literature review yet.
Yes.
But mine was a very big and painful literature review.
Oh, kia ora.
Luckily, or sadly maybe, at my university we had a bar on campus, and I would quite often be down there with thick stacks of books reading through the words of sustainability. But I called through all of that to present to you one slide. The word sustainability has to be understood through the context of Western land use law. And I'm pretty sure that American and New Zealand come from a British way of understanding land use laws. And British, the Western land use law that traces itself back to Old Testament. It has a spiritual rootedness, and this is through the literature. I have to go back through my readings to find it. But specifically, they said in the Old Testament is that quote, and I'm not very well read in the Old Testament, but to the effect that man has dominion over its natural and man has dominion over the earth to do as he pleases, to be abundant. And that framework, the way of understanding the world, is called anthropocentric. It's called man-centered, and literally it was man for a long time. Until now it became men, women, people of color. But for the longest time it was man-centered. And as these different land use ways of running and managing landscapes changed from we had initially the monarchy and the church were the landowners, and that was how nation states grew. Was that a king would give land to a lord, and he would take over that land, and that lord then owns the land and the people on the land, and he would use them. They would generate revenue, and they would taxation. The money would go up to the lord and the church. So that's where you had the lord and serf type of dichotomy. So that was, for a long time, that was the underpinning of Western land use law. And then that moved to the Enlightenment, when a lot of the traders and everything brought resources and wealth from outside that closed loop, and they brought the merchant class rose, and they began to kind of break the monopoly of the church and state over governance. That's when science and all of these people were being funded, and that was they would call that the Enlightenment. During that place and time, power shifted, and that gave the impetus for global colonization. So when that's how everyone got sent out and captured new land in the name of the church and the king and queen, and they began to colonize people. Then that shifted over into industrialization, where you had all of the different colonized communities creating textiles, the commodity that went back to the kingdom, or like England, the Commonwealth, and France had its Commonwealth, and all of these things changed. And that moved to global capitalism. So all these different ways of owning land shifted, but the basic principle that land existed purely for man's use and for man's benefit didn't change. Land was considered a property, a commodity that you would own, and that you had to be, the word that they considered, you had to be a good steward of it. You had to care for it to make sure that it would continue to provide for you, but it didn't have a right to exist on its own. It had no value outside of the value it served to mankind. And out of that growth, in 1987, there was the 1987. There was the Brundtland Report. I think it was a UN report that coined the term sustainable development, which was man has the right. society has the right, future generations have the right to the same resources and the same opportunities that this generation has. Which in essence was saying like, future generations should be able to use this land. And out of that term, sustainable development came that term sustainability that we all use now. So that's kind of like the anthropocentric worldview in a nutshell. And I can send you literature, and it's a lot. I'm trying to boil it down into a couple of minutes. If you flip the page, though, then the whakapapa of our kupuna, our ancestors, of how they understood the world, is a very different way. We have a lot of different chants, creation chants that talk about our ancestry. One of the major ones was a chant called the Kumulipo, which takes about 2 hours to chant. And it highlights the birth of the world from Po Ele Ele, the male and female creation, primordial creation deities. And it goes through 16 phases or Wa, periods of time. The first 8 is in Po, the second 8 is in O. The first 8 talk about, people have remarked how much it is like Darwin's, whatever that book, that Darwin's theory of species or so forth, because each Wa talks about, first it started with the reefs, then the small fishes and the big fishes and the crawlers. So by the time it got to the 8th Wa, which is Po, which is before man was here, you have the world created. Then the other 8th Wa that go that move on in O is the time of light, the time of man. So in that chant, what it tells us is that we are the youngest sibling on the landscape. Everything is older than us, and everything is related to us. It's a kupuna. So therefore, Kumulipo tells us that the land and natural resources where the body forms, and we call them kinolau. There are the 4 major deities, and there are other there are other deities that weren't as politically powerful, and their body forms, like the wind or like the water is the body form of Kane. The rain is the body form of Hu and some lightning. So there's different things. The body form is called kinolau, which is the kino is body and lau is the mini. So the body forms of our ancestors. So the Kumulipo says related to landscape and land and resources were the kinolau of our deified ancestors. And it built upon this notion of familial responsibility. Our ancestral crop in Hawaii is taro. And our stories talk about taro kalo is the eldest body, is the body form of our elder brother, Haloa, who was stillborn from the mating between Papa and Wakia and his daughter Ho'ohukalani. So even then, like the taro patches and all the things that you see were created and designed to care for our elder brother Haloa, and in caring for him, he fed us. And that was a really important way to understand the world. And within our land use management systems, we didn't manage huge swaths. I think I learned so much from understanding the difference between Hapu and Iwi, because in Hawaii, we were just all Hawaiians. We just kind of thrown in one pot, and that's because we had one chief that conquered everybody. But before Kamehameha, we were distinctly Hapu and Iwi too. Hapu from islands of Oahu, Maui, and Ho'inui, and Kauai, and all these other islands had their own distinct ways of doing things. So we kind of practiced colonization on ourselves at some level, but I think not as egregious. The point is that how we managed our lands here is that we were the expectation of all Maui on Hawaii were to be self-sufficient in your own watershed. So we call that the Ahu Pua'a. Ahu is a shrine and Pua'a is a pig to the god Nunu. So we had to be self-sufficient in our own watershed. From the top of our mountains, all past the fringing reef, is only things that we could use to be sufficient within our land. And you would never trade outside of these ahupua'a. You had to be self-sufficient in your own hometown. Everything, your medicine, your food, your complex carbs, your clothing, to your proteins had to come from this watershed. And there was a person in the middle. Your kaitiaki is our konohiki. Is a person that manages all of these resources woven together so that this biosystem works. So that's a really quick traditional land use model overview. An understanding in this worldview in English is called biocentric. Anthropocentric is that land is here purely for man's use to meet the needs of man and to ensure that man is healthy. Biocentric acknowledges that we live within a complex web of relationships that we have to nurture, and our needs don't supersede the needs of the land around us. And really, the land around us is our ancestors, and they're older than us, that we have to learn from them. So that's the land use model piece. If you move down quickly, the traditional economy, the next slide. In our ancestry, wealth didn't equal money. There's nobody that can show you a pre-contact example of a Hawaiian dollar. We didn't monetize things. We didn't make coinage. Wealth was determined by the ability to grow food and then maintain a population to do so. That was what our chiefs looked at as what wealth was. It was very different from the feudal system, which people like to describe Polynesian land use as, in that, for us anyway, the commoners, or we call them maka'ainana, like people who have the eyes to the land, we're not, we're not owned by the chiefs. They weren't property of the chiefs. There's stories that we could leave our chief, it was bad or kill him. So that was very different from how the serfs and lords owned the land, they owned the people. In traditional land economy, in a Western anthropocentric, the land and the chief, the land and the people were how the lords made money. In a traditional worldview, the land and the people were the chief's money. We were the actual capital of the chiefs. So that was a really different way to understand how our economic model worked. So we call that the biocentric. And then the final piece on the look at is this traditional spirituality. And in Olelo, Hawaii, there is no word for religion and there is no word for nature. Because there was no idea that you could do something that wasn't spiritual, and that there was no idea that you could be a part of the natural systems in which you live. Like, oh, nature is what happens outside of my hali. Everything else, that's this world out there. We were nature, and we lived completely spiritually. And the underpinning of our spirituality, what if the kauna of our spirituality was this? It's the idea of an ancestral and sentient landscape, regulated the behavior, and supported this idea that we have a mutual relationship with our ecology. Like the landscape was ancestor and sentient. It was your grandma, and she was watching you. And she watched everything you did. And even if not everybody believed that, if that was what the political assumption was, it dictated how you behaved when no one else is watching. If you think of land as a thing to make you money, you're going to do everything you can to make money off of the land, and you're not really going to pay attention to its health, well-being, as much as how much money you're going to make. When you think of the land as an ancestor, and it's also aware of what you're doing, then how you support your families and allow yourself to live within that is going to be very different. And I think that leads into the dichotomy part. This is another, at least for me when I was going to answer, this is a graduate level word. My wife told me to put that word in. It's like, that's the difference, use the word dichotomy. So, okay, I'll use dichotomy. So that's the difference between the two models. The dichotomy between Western and Polynesian or Maoli land use. Western land use are anthropocentric, and their key design was to extract things from that land so that you can make money. The whole point of why you would have private property is you own that land and you're going to put stuff on that land that makes you money. They were designed by people that came from continents. They were designed that you're going to have boundless resources and you can use all these things up. You can keep going and going and going. The production on this land, therefore, is primarily for export and trade with other people. Like, I'm going to create, New Zealand's known for its sheep. Hawaii was known for its sugar. We traded around the world to get the basic commodities sent here. And for the most part, in the Western land use systems, value was captured in money. How much money you made off of things. And that was your chief indicator. On the other side, traditional land use models are biocentric. Their purpose was to maintain the biosystem, or like the network of life, intact perpetually. They were designed by people who lived on islands. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't practice the type of like extracting things and making money on islands. We would have been a whole bunch of dead Polynesians. They wouldn't have gotten past Tonga. Imagine. We would have starved to death in Fiji. So like these systems were created by people who had island realities. And we really captured value in the health of land and people. So that was a quick dichotomy. I think the next page is the realities of a postmodern contact in Hawaii. How that played itself out was the clash between biocentric and anthropocentric traditions, where our ancestors were deposed and replaced with the model that mined all of our trees, it used the land to grow sugar to trade, it took all the water and refunneled it through all these different ways because they wanted to make money. And that created a crash in our natural resources, fisheries that we had managed for hundreds of generations, water and all these things. Our population went from about, they estimate 800,000 down to about 40,000 Hawaiians. We lost like 9 or 10 family members died within the space of 100 years. And all of our land was lost. And this extractive model continues to be practiced to this day, and therefore we've depleted a lot of our resources in Hawaii, and therefore the people who live in Hawaii says, well, we need to create a sustainability program now.